Hi, I'm Elena Tanzola. We're back in Vancouver with Mickey Fulp from the Mercenary Geologist and Rod Husband from Cipher Research. We're continuing our discussion on the true cost of mining gold. Where we left it off is that we need to dig deeper into the cash flow statements. Revenues are relatively easy to understand, they're pretty straightforward. What happens to cash?
Well, when we look at statement of cash flows on financial statements, we find three main uses of cash: operations, investing activities, and financing activities. For the 7 mining companies that we've looked at, the main uses of that cash is operations, or OPEX, which is anywhere from 40 to 50% of revenues, and investment in mining properties, or IMP as we refer to them, which is 30 to 40% of revenues. You just add those two up and that's almost all the revenues over the last 10 years that these companies have generated.
I understand then OPEX is the direct cost of producing gold. How about IMP? What really is IMP? It represents a significant outflow.
Well, it certainly does, and like it sounds like investment in mining properties. It's money put into assets to generate future earnings for the company, and it can be broken down into 2 parts. The increase in resources and reserves, which can generate future earnings, or increasing current production levels. It's important to note that IMP never makes it to the income statement of a company unless there's a write-down of the plant, property, and equipment. It's also important to note that acquisition costs are not included in IMP investment in mining properties.
I see. IMP then sounds like a necessary outflow of cash to me.
Yes, absolutely it is, but when you look at the effect of it on reserves and resources or production levels, it may be incorrectly categorized as an investing activity. As the charts show here, IMP has little or no impact.
So if IMP doesn't impact production levels and reserves and resource base, what does?
Again, if we look at these charts, we see that the main drivers for reserves and resources are price of gold and acquisitions. And as well, the main driver for production levels is acquisitions. When there's an acquisition by a company, the production levels go up. The price of gold has an impact on reserves and resources because companies every year recalculate the reserves and resources. So as gold price rises, they recalculate using a higher price of gold, which brings in some of the lower grade resources into the reserves and resource category.
Very interesting. Mickey, what's your take on it?
Well, let's note how, once again, the acquisition costs are not included in IMP. And what the gold mining companies have attempted to do is to sustain their production levels through acquisition. So let's look at a company that has not really tried to do that, and that's Newmont. Over the last 9 years, their production levels have actually declined. Now, they made it a couple of aborted attempts or ill-advised attempts to acquire reserves and resources through acquisition to the tune of $3.8 billion over the last 5 years. But both of those acquisitions failed, and what's happened, well, they've had to come down and write down $1.6 billion with those failed acquisitions.
In a nutshell, what you're saying is that IMP is classified as an outflow from investing activities, but it really should be classified as an outflow from operating activities, which ultimately eats into earnings. Am I correct?
Basically, yes, that's our take. And even the most vigilant auditors admit that they also have trouble drawing the lines between a capitalized expenditure versus an operating cost when it comes to these issues. And what we've done at Cipher is when you put 2 and 2 together and you look at the very simple inflows over outflows, you see that companies have trouble making enough cash to pay their bills. This is what we call our adequacy ratio, and if you look at this table, you'll see that over the last 10 years, very few companies have ever had an adequacy ratio greater than 1, meaning that only in a few select years have they generated enough cash from the mines to pay their bills.
Mickey, do you see it in a similar way?
Well, I agree with Rod wholeheartedly, but I'm going to spin it a little differently here. I think that gold mining in general, but gold mining in particular, should be a value industry, not a growth industry. And since this bull market for gold started in 2003, the mining companies decided it was a New York style of capitalism. We have to grow, 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 and that just does not work in the mining industry. And until they change their corporate philosophies, I don't think it is going to work.
That makes a lot of sense. Rod, anything to add to this?
Okay, I very much agree with Mickey. If a company doesn't generate enough cash to pay its bills, how can it be considered a growth industry and valued accordingly?
Rod, Mickey, thank you very much. Very valuable insights. I look forward to continuing our discussion on how to value mining companies, keeping in mind these necessary adjustments to cash flows and earnings.